Thanks for tuning in for one of our Sunday messages. At Red, we're continuing to lean into our vision of being a church of passionate and committed disciples who are devoted to Jesus' alternative for the world. If you're inspired or encouraged by the ministry of our church, we'd love to have you join us. You can find out more at redchurch.au.
We, as Ryan mentioned, are in a season. It's almost a mega series. I'm going to call it a season called Furnace of Faith. And that's not just what we've been preaching on. I was here on Thursday night, and it was fantastic. Luke led us, and Johan was playing worship, and it was just, there's Johan. And it was just a great time. So we've been in this season, which is more than preaching, but then also in this season, we've just finished a preach as part of this season, which is really looking at the way that the story that the culture has told us about having a good life is falling over. But I thought, I don't want to just critique what has been. I want to ask the question, well, okay, if there is this moment where all of a sudden people are looking at the story of culture and it's no longer resonating, how then do we follow Jesus in a way where we live lives that resonate, that call people to Him? So the title of this series is called A Beautiful Life. Now, to anchor this, I need to just do a little bit of work on the word beautiful. The word beautiful today, in many ways, has been degraded. It's like a photocopy of a photocopy of a photocopy. When we think about the word beautiful today, we think about someone who may be beautiful. We live in a world, I just was reading an article about how on different social media platforms they got plugins where increasingly it's becoming normative for there to be beauty filters, which change the size of your eyes and the smoothness of your skin, so you look more beautiful. And in many ways, this is miles from how people reading the scriptures would have understood the word beautiful. In the ancient Greco-Roman world, the word beauty meant so much more than just a beautiful person or a beautiful table setting. See, beauty pointed beyond that which was beautiful to something greater, which spoke of something more beautiful. And ugly didn't just mean a lack of aesthetics. It didn't mean just waking up on a day and not feeling yourself and your hair's all funny. It actually meant something deeper. It meant disordered, chaotic, fragmented, disharmonious. And therefore, in contrast, beauty meant ordered, coherent, harmonious. Beauty pointed beyond itself to something greater. And all the beautiful things, as we encounter them in their fleetingness, point to something deeper, truer, and eternal. And this raises the question then, well, what is the thing behind beauty? What does it point towards? And to dig into this, let's turn to Scripture. We're going to begin with Mark's Gospel, and we're going to begin in chapter 8, verses 11 to 13. Jesus is out, he's doing his ministry. He's gone from a life where he lived in relative obscurity as a tradesperson, and then he enters into ministry at the beginning of his 30s and opens the Torah scroll one day in a local synagogue, and it all goes public. There's a reaction. There is people who are healed. There are demons that are cast out. The good news is preached. The kingdom is announced. But there's also opposition and a group called the Pharisees who want renewal and partially are right in wanting their culture to be renewed, but are going about in the wrong way. And we see this in this story. So this group, this religious group, the Pharisees, come up to Jesus. It begins like this. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus, to test him. They asked him for a sign from heaven. Now note this, I love this. There's little just things you can skip over, but the humanness of what happens next. Jesus sighed deeply. This, again, I wasn't there, but the impression I get is, there's a slight frustration in this sigh. Jesus sighed deeply and said, "Why does this generation ask for a sign?" A generation there is not Gen Alpha, Gen Z, baby boomers, millennials, or Generation X. It's actually everyone in the world at this time. And he says, "Truly, I tell you, no sign will be given it." And then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed to the other side. You see, the Pharisees were looking for a sign, something that would prove that the Messiah had come. But here is the tragedy. See, a sign points to something. But you don't need a sign if you're already somewhere. If you are standing in the main street of Ballarat, you don't need a sign telling you to go to Ballarat. And these guys were looking for a sign pointing to the Messiah, but literally the Messiah is there to the point where we can even hear his sigh, the outtake of breath, the slumping of his shoulders as he sighs. They didn't need a pointer, they needed to be able to see the person, and yet they missed him. And so much of our world makes the same mistakes. We look for the wrong signs. We see things as beautiful in of themselves, and this can lead us chasing the wrong maps, missing the Messiah in our midst. And when we do this, when we miss him, life falls into disorder. And when we can see him and center on him, life regains harmony and therefore beauty. During World War II, when it became obvious that Britain was possibly about to be invaded by the German army, who had moved through Europe like a hot knife through butter, they realized they needed to slow down this advance. They called it the Blitzkrieg, which means in German, lightning war. It was moving so fast, and the planners were like, the British government were like, if they come here, we don't want them just racing through the countryside. So they came up with a plan to actually stop them or at least slow them down. And so overnight, a group of people went out with wrenches and began to take down all of the signs. They removed street signs, road signs, motorway signs. They even removed station signs. And then people woke up the next day to a much more confusing reality where if you're catching a train and you have to get off at a particular station, there's no sign. This was a time, no Google Maps. People driving around the country couldn't find their way because all the signs had gone. Now, researching this, I found a story from a local paper called the Suffolk Gazette in southern England. And it told this story. This is from 2023. And it reported on a story by a guy called Bert Kavanagh, 86, who's a retired ball-bearing polisher from Yeovil, Somerset. Now, while cleaning out the shed of his lately departed friend George, he discovered that George had stashed a whole collection of World War II road signs. So when they were taken down, he'd hid them in his shed. So the reporter went to from the Suffolk Gazette, went to Bert and asked Bert what he found. And Bert replied, signs. The reporter asked, how many? Lots. How many is lots? The Suffolk Gazette asked Bert, loads. So what Bert decided to do was to wheel them into town in his barrow and randomly reattach them to different signposts, ignoring where they should point. Bert then sat down in the pub opposite the Red Lion and drinking an ale, laughed and watched as people wandered in circles completely confused. And there was this fantastic quote from Bert in the Suffolk Gazette, and I was going to have this up in front of us as a quote. We have quotes often, from smart, people throughout history and holy, sacred thinkers. But I just want to do this. I just want to have Bert. And the quote was, literally when they asked him what he thought of this, was, "Mwahahahaha." I just wanted to have that up. That was my plan, to tell the story of what happens when you're pointed in the wrong direction and how this is what our culture does. But then I just thought, hang on, I just need to double check. I just need to go back to that story. And I went back to get the quote right, the mwahaha. I wanted to get that right. And then I clicked on the Suffolk Gazette, and then I saw a little warning that someone had put about the Suffolk Gazette, that actually it's not a real newspaper. That it's actually a newspaper designed by some people in Suffolk to trick real newspapers. And on their website, they have the sort of score of all these famous national dailies who they've actually tricked with their false stories. So I'm sad to say that Bert doesn't exist. No, he never put the signs up. They did take the signs down in World War II, but never was put up. But it proved my point. When you are pointed in the wrong direction, confusion reigns. But this is what's happening in our moment. In the last series, we talked about that the wrong signs are telling us that the world is just simply stuff. That if the world's just stuff, you can control it. And therefore, if you can control it, you can master it and you can maximize. And so what life then becomes is these broken down things that are just things. Even relationships can become objects. And the more that you just get these things, that objects, and you get them to bend towards your will, the more you can have a wonderful life. So we're not like suffering from a lack of signs. In fact, we're filled with information and signs in our world, pointing us in all kinds of directions, many which seem beautiful, but they're sending us in the wrong direction. Now, the problem is that the more and more there are of these signs, the more and more there is of this information, the more and more there are ways to maximize, to do everything from how you can get ahead at work, in your personal fitness, to be a person who achieves this, to do all of these things, to maximize, is that the more you have to just keep accelerating and doing more and more. Now, if those in the ancient world were to look at our lives, which seemingly sometimes might look, there are moments which could be Instagrammable moments of beauty. People in other times and places would look at our lives and perhaps call them ugly, not because they're not attractive in a way, but because they don't look good on the surface, because underneath them there is a lack of harmony. They are disordered. The sociologist Harmut Rosa says that when life is only about control, it continually accelerates. And when this happens, you, in a sense, become so focused on maximizing everything is that the world becomes mute. It no longer speaks to you. When things are just things, they become just objects. They're just resources to be managed. And I think this is the actual sense that so many people have in today that's falling down. The world so filled with opportunities is actually just becoming an empty place that no longer gives us the deeper beauty that we hunger for. He says, the right approach to the world must be then one where the world becomes resonant. We're understanding that the world is about relationship and openness, that it's alive and it's able to speak back to us. And what resonance really is just another word for harmony. You see, when something resonates, it's in tune. Notes line up, vibrations match, sound becomes music instead of noise. And this is the older understanding of beauty that was understood when the scriptures were written, that beauty is not just something shiny and attractive on the surface, but the deeper sense of things fitting together. Now, this could just free float. You could just have this value, well, I want to see the deeper sense of beauty. And there are many people pointing towards this. There are people trying to point ways out of this secular failing that we seem to have. But the danger is just simply the idea of beauty floating out there as a value is never going to be resilient enough to actually bring order to our lives. The prophet Isaiah pointed towards someone who will come, a king that was greater than any king. The kings who had failed Israel were marked by their humanness and failure and often disorder and disharmony, which led to sin and brokenness and injustice and strife. In Isaiah 33 verse 17, he says, your eyes, this is a promise, a prophetic promise, your eyes will see the king in his beauty and view a land that stretches afar. This is pointing to a king, Jesus, the Messiah, who's coming, and the world that he's creating, that will go afar, not just geographically, but into eternity. And the prophets gave Israel a vision of a coming king who would bring restoration, peace, and harmony. In the Gospels, this is called eirene, peace. In the Old Testament, it's shalom. Not just the absence of war, the absence of anxiety, but something deeper, something more whole. And so to live a beautiful life is to actually place this coming king at the center, that he's moving towards, and he wants to be placed at the center, not as a visitor, but one who literally holds all things together. In Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 to 20, it says this vast, epic explanation of who Jesus is. It says the Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning and the firstborn from among the dead, so that in everything he might have supremacy. But God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile himself to all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. What this is saying is, at the bottom is not just mere matter or atoms, that actually Jesus is holding the whole of creation together. He created the world. He is bringing history towards his ends. He's present with us now, the resurrected Jesus. That as we do this and start a new service here, and this is the beginning of something and step into something, that Jesus' body is the church, that he's the head of it, that it's expanding in the world at the moment, that he's actually the center of your life, that he's been working in your life up to now. He's going to secure your future, and he's present to you now. And so beauty. Jesus is holding everything together. It's not an abstract concept of beauty. It's the beautiful Messiah who is the center of all things. And the disorder, the disharmony, the brokenness, the sin which ripples through the world, that actually that's been dealt with on the cross, that the scriptures then tells us that by making peace, shalom, irene, bringing things into his holy order, that through the blood shed on the cross that we just took at the communion meal, that he's now moving everything to a beautiful order where he'll reconcile all things to him. In all things, in him all things are held together. See, what feels chaotic, a chaotic life, a chaotic environment, a chaotic home, a chaotic relationship, a chaotic mental world, in him, it can find harmony. Beauty flows from this coherence. The world is not random, but is being ordered by Christ. Augustine said in his classic Christian book, all things are beautiful because you made them, but you who made all things are inexpressibly more beautiful. This is what happens when we put Jesus at the center. I just wanted to end and pull this together with a story. My parents, this last fortnight, have moved out of the home that they bought in 1974. They've been in this house for over half a century, just. And they've moved now to a retirement village, which actually is just behind our other location, Nunawading. And so the last few weeks has been moving stuff and doing all kinds of things and getting ready. And so as a family, we decided to have this farewell dinner 2 Saturday nights ago. And so us, the kids and our kids, and everyone was there, and it was a big sort of celebration. But near the end of the night, because my kids were there and they were emotional, this is the place where they'd had like sleepovers and stuff. I just had this sense that I wanted to come back in quietness. So I said to my parents, Mondays are my day off. Can I just come for lunch? And they said, yep. And they also told me that my brother Glenn had also asked to come for lunch. He was coming. So there was something appropriate. This was the four of us. And so I turn up at 12 for lunch, and it's quieter than it was at the party on Saturday night. And I look at this house. Now, this house has changed over the years. When my parents moved in there, it was quite small, and they did a bit of a renovation. And then when me and my brother moved out, they did a de-renovation and made it smaller. They cut the backyard in half, sold a house at the back. So it's actually changed heaps. It doesn't look heaps. There's bits of it which are from when I was a little boy. But there was this moment where we were sitting down, and I'd been pretty good. Like my kids were emotional. I hadn't been emotional on Saturday night. And there's this bit where we're sitting down, and Mum's in the kitchen, and she offered would be sort of making this food, and she's bringing out a lunch, and it was croissants with cheese. And she had it under the grill, as she often did. And I can see as she's bringing it out, I can sense Glenn, my brother, is getting emotional. We're sitting there like grown men now, mum and dad older, sitting there. And I can just sort of sense that. You know when someone's getting emotional, you don't have to look at them, but you're hearing a bit of... And I thought, don't do it. I'm not going to get emotional. I thought, I'll get emotional at the end as I'm leaving. I'd worked it all out. I had this all under control because stuff's just matter. And if you can control it, you can maximize it. I was going to have the ultimate way of, no. And then I started to feel emotional. It's like when someone's laughing, when you shouldn't be laughing in class. And if someone else laughs, you're gone. But this was the opposite. It wasn't laughing. It was crying. And then I was like, okay, don't get emotional. And then I sort of opened my eyes and I looked at Mum and she's bringing out the tray. And there was just this moment of profundity hit me. It's one of those moments of beauty. Took a photo of it. Wouldn't look amazing. I actually took a photo. We took a photo of ourselves. It wouldn't look amazing. There's nothing about that photo that we go, wow. It's not like, wow, the house, the light was amazing and the shade of grey that they've chosen for the walls and just the lounge suite designed in 1952 in Denmark. But, it's not a home beautiful moment. But it was beautiful because it was like this final moment in this great chain of dinners and lunches. Us as a family, when we were little, I didn't know. They told me this. It's like a movie. Why do you tell me this at the final dinner? That they wouldn't have been able to afford the house in 1974. And they just prayed, and their value always to put Christ at the center of everything. That's the value I grew up with. And the value was like they felt led to do this, to start a home where they could do ministry. And Dad had chosen to work at RMIT so he could do student ministry, just volunteer. And then I found out, I'd never known this, that they had received $2,000, which was a lot of money in 1974, anonymously. From a Christian they didn't know. They knew they were involved in the world around the student ministry, but this person had given them the $2,000. And for me, I then thought of this line of these dinners, this house enabled by that. I thought of the conversations we'd had about God. I thought about so many of the things that have made me who I am. I do a podcast called Rebuilders. We talk about faith and life and politics and culture. All of that starts at that dinner table. That was just dinner table conversation. I thought of the different people that my parents let into our house who we shared the gospel with, or we shared just Christian hospitality with, just people from all over the world we had. It was just amazing, international students. I remember we were trying to work it out. Like one day we had an official, like a high-ranking official from the Vietnamese Communist Party have dinner at a house. And we're like, how did he come? No one remembers exactly how this happened, but that's the sort of stuff that happened. When I worked for the Salvation Army and we had all these relationships with homeless youth, I'd bring them around, and Mum and Dad, it didn't matter whether you're a high-ranking communist official from the Vietnamese Communist Party or you're just a kid who didn't have a home. They were welcomed. And just in that moment, it wasn't like this high point moment that you can take a photo of and then just hold at a distance. It was realization that I'd been part of this story, a symphony, a great painting, not made of one grand brushstroke, but millions of little just touches of love, all centered, Christ at the center. There were really difficult moments when I was 16 and I was struggling so deeply with depression and I didn't want to live anymore. And my parents' patience with me. All of these moments as Mum was bringing out the grilled cheese croissants hit me. And we prayed grace the last time in that house. And for me, that was this high point spiritually some of the best conferences I've ever been to, some of the high points of worship, some of the moments where you're at a service and there's an altar call. All these things are beautiful and wonderful. But what I realized is at that moment is that when you go through life, you can be so orientated by poor signs pointing to things which are beautiful in of themselves, when actually what we're being invited into is this beautiful life that's beautiful. And often you don't realize it until you step back and see the great panorama. You can look at the Grand Canyon like this, but you only grasp its beauty when you step back. But what made it beautiful is my parents weren't perfect, or they're humans. I'm human. I'm not perfect. But what hit me was, it was a testimony of what it looks like when ordinary people put Jesus at the center. It truly makes life beautiful. And if you're hungering for a life that's beautiful, can I just encourage you to put Jesus at the center? That he is at the center? That the Pharisees missed him? He was there. He's there breathing, touchable. Jesus at the center of so many things, the good, the difficult, the joys, the challenges. But he's there. So when we recognize he's at the center, and when we say to him, I don't want to control this, I'm tired of controlling it, and hand over to him, this is how we construct a beautiful life. And in some ways, I think this story is also true and really appropriate for the first service here at 11:15. We stand in a building that's had thousands, hundreds of thousands of little beautiful actions as a church of Christ begun during the First World War. You'll notice the stained glass has a poppy in the center up there. People who worshipped and loved here. You can't put a price on that. You can't measure it. It's not measurable like the world tells us. But what I love is that it gets to continue. And that's why I said I'm excited about these empty seats. I'm excited about what's going to happen. I'm excited about what he's going to do here. And my prayer is that it's a beautiful symphony with Jesus, the beautiful Jesus at the center, head of a body that he's building in this world. So I'd love you to stand. And I'm going to pray. Jesus, we, first of all, just confess. Sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we miss it. We're looking at the wrong signs. Maybe we're looking at the shiny signs. We're looking for the signs to Ballarat when we're standing on the main street of Ballarat. And we just confess that perhaps we're, looking for the beautiful when actually we're missing the beautiful King. So Jesus, I just want to thank you that you're the center of things. You're holding creation together. You created the world. You're moving history towards your ends. You died on the cross so that we wouldn't have to pay a price. We're over-struggling. We're over-controlling. We're over-maximizing. We're sick of a world that's doing all of that. Instead, Jesus, we pray as individuals, as a church, as a city, as a nation, that we just begin to see you at the center of things. And God, just in these reflective moments, just as we just worship now, as we're coming to the end of the service, I just pray for different orientation to the world. May we put down the striving, instead see the beauty. May we move back from the painting so we can see the span. May you just gently tell us where we've been like the Pharisees, looking for the sign but missing the Savior in our midst. Jesus, just want to dedicate this new time slot to you. It's more than a time slot. It feels like a crude way of saying it. It's beginning a relationship with you, and you incarnated into the world. You didn't stay as the concept of the beautiful out beyond Pluto. You came, you lived, you loved, you walked amongst, you died on the cross, you rose again, and now at the right hand of the Father, holding the whole cosmos together. So we thank you, we worship you. Build something beautiful here. Build something beautiful in our lives. We ask and pray this in Jesus' name.